Okay, so the format is that there will be 3-minute opening statements made by Faren and then by Richard. And then there'll be 5 questions where Richard and Faren will alternate. And then there'll be a 2-minute per person closing statement. And that would be Richard and then Faren. Any questions about the format? Everyone's good about that? Okay, so then why don't we start with the opening statement.
Okay. I'd like to thank Professor Wilson, the Elections Committee, and the tellers for facilitating this forum. For those of you who don't know me, let me introduce myself. I've been a professor in the Department of History, Political Science, Geography, and Latin American Studies for over 24 years. I've served as an officer on the NCCFT Executive Committee, as a union's judge on the grievance panel, as an academic senator, and on numerous committees. By way of background, I hold a PhD in American history, and I'm an attorney and former contract negotiator on behalf of a public benefit corporation. But I think most importantly, as a member of this faculty, I am dedicated to maintaining a central role for this faculty at the college and ensuring a fair and safe work environment. So here's my pledge to you. I will restore respect for the NCCFT and the faculty. I will be a union president who will work on behalf of the entire faculty, teaching, non-classroom, and PFU. I will leave no one behind. The days of asking the union for help and being told to read the contract will end. The days of the union stepping back and sometimes stepping away when the administration attempts to discipline you or terminate you will end. I will not defer to the college's lawyers for contract interpretation. And I will enforce our past practices as part of our protections. This is what I will do as your union president and contract administrator. Now, we all know we've lost 1/3 of our full-time faculty in 7 years, and I'm running to help rebuild our faculty. I will work with Professor Williams to create a faculty for the 21st century. Under my leadership, and of course, with the assistance of knowledgeable faculty, we will have a safe working environment. I won't let the college ignore our rights to healthy classrooms and offices. There are rights and they will not be ignored or eroded. I will build internal and external coalitions. Our union will once again be respected by political officials. They will listen to us. Under my tenure, this union will command respect, and together with your support, we will bring about a better future for our faculty, students, and this college. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is going to be Richard.
Thank you, Vondora, and thank you to the Tellers and Elections Committee for their hard work in putting these elections together, and thank all of you who are attending for taking the time to hear Faren and I speak. If you don't know me, my name is Richard Newman. This is my 32nd year at the college as a member of the English department, and I have, over those years, had many leadership positions, both departmental and college-wide. I began my work with the NCCFT Executive Committee as the moderator of the faculty activists list when Donald Astrab was president, when we were working on those problems. After that, I became the communications coordinator for the NCCFT Executive Committee. I was elected secretary of the NCC in 2016, and I was elected classroom vice president in June of 2020, in which position I served until September 1st of this semester, when I took on the role of acting president of the NCCFT. Before I say what else I have to say, I want to acknowledge something that for some of you might be an elephant in the room, that some people have mentioned to me that I should address specifically. I've served on 2 different executive committees under 2 different presidents whose terms were marked by controversy and unfortunately very angry and often personal and ad hominem divisiveness. It is true that while I was on those committees, even though I did not always agree, I publicly supported each of those presidents in their work. It would be difficult for any executive committee to function effectively if its members did not agree on a public presentation of unity. As a result, though, for some of you at least, my presence as a candidate may carry some of the baggage of the controversies and divisiveness of the past. I hope that you will hear what I have to say tonight with fresh ears. I often disagreed with both presidents under whom I served, and much of what you will hear me saying this evening is rooted in those disagreements. We face, as a union, significant challenges. The college's enrollment and budget problems and how they will impact our jobs. The chronic underfunding of public higher education, which has shifted the burden of payment to students and forced colleges to raise tuition, which has an impact on our jobs. The push to bring the Nassau Community College in line with the national trend of the corporatization of higher education, which has a lot to do with the pushback that we get from the administration on certain aspects of our contract. I will address some of these issues when I respond to the questions you've submitted. I'd like in my opening statement, though, to share with you some of what I've done in the short 6 weeks since I became the union's acting president. I responded very quickly and forcefully to the on-campus presence policy that the administration introduced after the semester began, making sure they understood why it was problematic and making sure that VP Lausch's clarification came out as soon as possible. I responded quickly and forcefully to the at best problematic comments made by Dr. Garden in his acknowledgement of Yom Kippur at the end of September's Board of Trustees meeting. I have met with Dr. Williams to discuss with him in detail some of the opportunities he and his administration.
Unfortunately, Richard, you ran out of time.
Okay.
All right, so we're moving on to the questions. So here's the first question that we have. Could you provide us with your assessment of the president and the cabinet, both with the BOT and the role of academic affairs? So you're assessing the president, the cabinet, the board of trustees, and the role of academic affairs. And Richard, you're going first.
So my assessment of the areas where I think the administration has its own work to do in making our relationship as productive as possible. This is where I would like to focus this question, since part of what any president needs to do is establish a productive relationship with the administration. We need to establish trust and mutual respect, and the administration has fallen short in this. The on-campus presence policy that happened at the beginning of the semester is one example about this. And when I spoke with President Williams about this at our first meeting, I told him that regardless of why the on-campus policy, why that happened, it undid a significant portion. Excuse me. We need to establish trust and mutual respect. We need to demonstrate that the values driving the college's response to our budget, the college needs to demonstrate that the values driving its response to our budget are those of public higher education, not a corporation. At a Board of Trustees meeting last academic year, Dr. Garden made it clear that he was not happy to learn that the percentage of the college budget accounted for by salary and fringe benefits was in the high 80s. President Williams, if you listen to him when he speaks, uses corporate buzzwords like reducing redundancies, increasing efficiencies, and reallocating resources. Even the phrase he uses over and over again, increased access, completion, and post-completion success, has the ring of a corporate slogan. To be clear, all of those issues need to be addressed. And to be fair, I want to acknowledge that the college has managed to save jobs and avoid the kinds of layoffs that have taken place at other institutions. Still, we have seen little evidence that the administration's values are our values when it comes to public higher education. The administration also has fallen short in demonstrating that the college respects and values the role full-time faculty play in the life of the college. Communications from the administration routinely fail to account for how policies and procedures might impact classroom management or the management of students in student services areas. There is an academic department on our campus with no full-time classroom faculty. The administration has committed to supporting that department only with adjunct faculty. At a meeting with the NCCFT Executive Committee last year, President Williams made it clear that he understands temporary full-time lines to be basically adjunct contracts with benefits, an approach which has profound implications for whether or not anyone hired on a temporary line will ever be able to earn tenure. The administration and the Board of Trustees, in other words, has a lot of work to do in order to demonstrate to us that they are willing to work with us to establish a productive relationship. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're moving on to our second presenter. Faren, you ready?
Yep, I'm ready. Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to answer this question very directly regarding the way it was written. So President Williams appears to be an earnest individual. His contract, for those of us who don't know it, it's up in December, but let's assume the BOT will renew it. My full assessment will have to wait until we speak one-on-one and I ascertain if he has any genuine willingness or ability to work collaboratively with this faculty to move it forward. However, the bigger issue as I see it is the cabinet. I say this because Professor Williams often remarks that he can't make a decision without speaking to the cabinet. This is the administrative branch, I think, that we need to focus on. The cabinet is comprised of Maria Canzati, Mark Lausch, Julio Izquierdo, and Donna Hogan. As you all know, Joe Muscarella is retiring. I don't think it's productive to speak about these individuals, individually, with one exception that I'll make. But the salient point is that the president needs the cabinet's approval for almost all the decisions of any consequence. So for us, this is a problem, as the cabinet members with the most sway either have the least understanding of the college, this faculty, and the needs of our students, are hostile to this faculty, or, like Donna Hogan, the college's in-house counsel, appears to spend quite a bit of time trying to gut our contract. In my opinion, the cabinet, and particularly the lawyer, has an oversized role and influence. And this would be something I think that we need to seriously consider as we move forward. So, on to the BOT. So the majority of the Board of Trustees are holdovers. That means that their terms have expired. It's past time for us to actively engage with our state and county elected officials to replace these members and get fresh eyes and perspectives that will sit on that BOT. We would be best served by trustees who are more pro-faculty, pro-student, pro the college mission, and who are willing to do what trustees at other colleges do: fundraise for the college, advocate for the college with the state and the county. There's something not quite right about a Board of Trustees which brags it has never asked the county for a raise in our operating budget. And this is particularly egregious because we haven't seen a raise in 13 years. But before the board changes, we must still deal with the board that we have. The way to change the decisions of the current board is through exerting political pressure. And I will actually have more to say on that. And I believe there's an academic affairs aspect to this question. So I want to turn to academic affairs. This is a college division, not a union committee or an entity like the Academic Senate that is provided for in our contract. Therefore, it is not under union control, nor can it be subject of mandatory bargaining. Theoretically, academic affairs is supposed to deal with exactly what its name implies, academic affairs. However, I am aware that there are some problems with whether or not it's fulfilling its role. So what can the union do with such a college division? The union can and must advocate for the faculty within academic affairs to ensure its decisions do not negatively impact our working conditions, nor permit its decisions to violate the contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Faren. Okay, we're moving on to the next question. If you're elected, what is one thing you think is most important to change about the NCCFT and how it operates? What do you think is the role of the executive board? So Faren, could you please start this question?
Sure. So we're all aware of the challenges we as a faculty, as a union face. The question becomes how to reverse these. The answer in large measure lies in making some fundamental changes in how our union operates. We must become proactive externally and transparent and responsive to our members. So first, let's look at the external. The key to that success lies in becoming a political force in the county. And I really believe we can accomplish this in relatively short order. I would revamp our political action committee and form active alliances with other unions, particularly the CSEA. Why? Because the CSEA is a county-wide union with a significant presence on the campus. Their success for maintaining these jobs at NCC depends on this faculty's continued viability. It's a natural fit, and we simply need to reach out. We can also build a relationship with the state and county legislators on both sides of the aisle. Now, some of you may be surprised to hear me say both sides of the aisle, but as your union president, you will find me to be very pragmatic. Achilles and Aspires, for example, was saved through political assistance, and we need to build our political connections. There are also community organizations, particularly those community groups who have an interest in public education and whose communities we serve. Again, what we need to do is to extend a hand, and we will find allies amongst these groups. All that I've mentioned is possible, and even more encouraging is the fact that there are many, many of you with the knowledge and the contacts to make this happen. I will reach out to you. What all this points to is that to change our internal conditions, we need outside assistance. The other change needed concerns how the NCCFT interacts with its members. Too often, members seeking assistance are essentially left to their own devices. They aren't supported. They don't feel supported. As a union president, contract administrator, I will advise you regarding your rights and how we can assist. We will be here for you when you have a problem. You will not feel abandoned. Regarding the executive board, there are certain duties of the executive board contained in the union constitution, and these have been ignored. I would restore its constitutional role as a body that can help formulate policy and one that serves as a forum for ideas. Currently, the union sees the executive board primarily as a communications channel to impart the executive committee's actions and decisions back to the departments. This is a very top-down approach to unionism, and it's an approach that I reject. I think it's time to return the executive board to its originally intended role. We need to make the best use of our most valuable resource, and that's our faculty. This reform will make us a more effective union. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next presenter is Richard. You ready?
Yes, thank you. So if I had to say what the one thing I think is the most important for us to change, I believe we have to organize ourselves internally in a way that we have not been till now. And I believe that where that internal organization starts is with the executive board. At the first meeting of the executive board, I made a point of changing the way that business has been done historically at the board, so that instead of taking up a large portion of the meeting with the executive committee's report, the executive committee's report will be limited to maybe 10 or 15 minutes, so that there is in fact time for the board to have the kinds of discussions and to make proposals to formulate policy that are in keeping with its constitutional role as defined in our Constitution. At that board meeting, I made some proposals for the board to create some ad hoc subcommittees, at least as a beginning for them taking on that role. So I proposed an internal communications ad hoc subcommittee for the board to make proposals about the way in which we communicate with each other, because there are ways that are available to us that are not dependent on the college. Right now, the only way that we have to communicate really to the group as a whole is through the college's email, through Zoom sessions like this, and every single way that we have to do that is dependent on the college's server. We have a union website, and we can use that website to communicate. Also, I've asked to form a subcommittee for external communications to do precisely the kinds of thing that Faren was talking about, to propose how we might reach out as a union to other unions, to constituencies outside of the campus. And I will, in that regard, also say that I'm working with Steph Crompier, who is the president of the AFA, to create a president's council for the presidents of the unions that are on campus, so that the president of the NCCFT, the president of the AFA, the president of the NCCAA, and the president of the CSEA will be meeting. There are a couple of other ways in which I think we could organize internally. One is to create a leadership pipeline. a way that will allow us to cultivate union leadership from among the members that is more, that is more inclusive, more participatory than the one that we have now. I believe that we need to set up committees. Contract negotiations are coming up. I believe we need to set up subcommittees to work on contractual issues so that different constituencies within the union can address the issues that they have with the contract and propose those to the negotiating committee. I also think we need to organize around health and safety, but I'll say a little bit more about that later. I think that this kind of organization will, by definition, lead to greater transparency in the union. More people will be involved. It will be possible to share information in ways and to be transparent in ways that perhaps people feel the union has not been until now. This kind of organization also builds trust. It builds trust not just in the executive committee and the executive board as sort of the elected umbrella under which that organization takes place, but it helps to build members to build trust in each other. And that trust becomes sustainable because it emerges from a commitment that the members make to each other through this organization. That kind of trust can also help us address some of our own internal inequities, and I'll give you two examples. We have right now a two-tier system of classroom faculty. We have classroom instructional faculty who are housed in the academic departments, and link faculty whose work is essentially no different from what classroom instructional faculty do, but whose terms and conditions of employment make them second tier. We were able to put Link on the bargaining table at the last negotiations, and that discussion about their terms and conditions continues. There are also a group of members, those hired after May 2014, who have actually different terms of health insurance than those of us who were hired before that date. Those hired after May 2014 have to pay for their health insurance. Neither of those inequities serves us well as a union, which is not about blaming the teams that negotiated those terms and conditions. I'm sure they did the best they could at the time. It is to suggest that we have a responsibility as fellow union members to try to resolve those inequities. And resolving those inequities requires us to have, I believe, the kind of commitment that comes from strong internal organization. That kind of organization is how we demonstrate and deepen and nurture our commitment to each other. It is where our strength as a union comes from and where your executive committee and your presidents draw their strength from. That's why I think it's such an important change to make. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, our next question is, what do you believe makes a good union president? What are your top 3 priorities? Richard, could you please start by responding to this question?
Oops, sure. First and foremost, a good union president can never forget that they have been elected to serve the membership and that their value as a president will ultimately be determined not by a record of perfect or near perfect success, though such a record couldn't hurt, of course, but by their ability to inspire and mobilize the membership and by the fearlessness, tenacity, and strategic acumen they bring to that service. No president can promise ahead of time what they will achieve, and we all know the checklist of issues that we all believe need to be fought for. A good president is not just someone who inspires in you the confidence that he or she is more likely than not to succeed in fighting for you. A good president is also someone who inspires in you both the desire and commitment to take action, however large and small, in pursuit of that success. That's why these 3 priorities I'm going to list, they're not prioritized in order. I see them as simultaneous, but obviously I have to list them in order. My first priority, as I have already explained, is for us to organize internally. I also believe we need to organize around health and safety, which I will talk about in more detail in the next question. The other priority that I have is to prepare for the upcoming contract negotiations. Our current contract expires on August 31st, 2022. We already know some of what the administration will almost certainly be coming for. We know that they are likely to put having the chairs in the bargaining unit on the table, and I'll talk more about that when we get to question 5. We know that they're probably be coming for our workload on any number of fronts, including the 5 hours classroom faculty are supposed to give to departmental and college service. We know that they are going to come after any increase in efficiencies and reduced redundancies that they can, to use the terms that President Williams uses in his talks to the Board of Trustees. Preparing for this requires us to do more than take a survey of your priorities, which has been how we have done this in the past. We need to strategize. We need to come up with strong and concrete proposals of our own to put on the table. And if I am elected, I will form the committees to look at that contract, to find those proposals, to find the people who can sit down and formulate them. Thank you.
Okay, Faren, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, a good president knows how to independently read and interpret the contract. And she searches for sound solutions to our problems and does not just take the simplest but often least satisfying path. A good union president is transparent and wants to listen to her members. A good union president knows when she needs advice, assistance, or expertise from her members. It's foolish to believe that any one person knows everything or has all the answers. A good union president protects her members' jobs and rights and protections under the contract. A good union president understands that we are a public union and we must engage with the public and our elected officials in order to be an effective union. A good union president must be respected and have the trust and confidence of her members. And if you elect me, I will earn that trust. So here are my 3 top priorities. No surprise, protect the contract. No more bites out of our contract. No more giving up something for nothing. This also means preparing for the contract well in advance of its expiration date. It includes political lobbying. Remember, our contract must be approved by the county. And genuinely ascertaining your needs. I and the other officers will speak with all the departments about your needs and concerns, because who knows these better than you? Additionally, protecting the contract also means no more secret MOAs. These are ill-advised and destroys the trust between the union and its members. So my second priority is I will protect each and every member 365 days a year. If you need assistance, I and this union will be here for you. You will be this union's top priority. Again, no more directing you to simply read the contract or stand back while you're under attack. Understanding the contract will be my job, not yours. I will always have your back, and that means ensuring that you have a safe work environment. And last, I will work to rebuild the faculty. We can't keep bleeding faculty. If we do, we'll soon be a skeleton faculty. I will focus on new hiring that will provide our students with a 21st century diverse and vibrant faculty. Thank you.
Okay, great. We're moving on to the next question now. Last spring, we started to envision a return to face-to-face teaching during a pandemic. What did or what would you do in the union president capacity to ensure a safe work environment? What do you think is the future of remote learning? And Faren, could you start that question, please?
Well, it's been an uneven and unbalanced reopening, with some faculty, particularly PFU, non-classroom faculty, along with the chairs, bearing the largest burden, and this really is not acceptable. But I think the biggest failure is that the college has not provided us with a safe, sanitary, and a healthy work environment. We've all experienced or read that there are still inadequate air exchange in classrooms and offices, nor do we have what the CDC has clearly stated promotes a safe indoor working space, windows that open, and an adequate exchange of fresh air. Our buildings and offices and classrooms also remain either too hot or too cold, leading to an increase in what was a dangerous pre-COVID condition, and you all know what that is, mold. You've either seen the mold firsthand or in photos, and yes, mold can kill. So now we're under a double threat, mold and COVID. Yet many administrators have characterized faculty complaints about mold as whining and spoiled. Interestingly, many of those same administrators are wholly or mostly working from home, assuming neither the burdens nor risk of a face-to-face environment. This points to an ongoing problem and what I believe puts NCC's very existence at risk. We're no longer a college where everyone respects the authority of all college constituents and the need to work together to create a safe and excellent work environment. So what would I have done differently? Well, almost everything. Why? Because we all want to return face-to-face, but we want to do it safely. I would have devised our own foundational principles for reopening in the midst of an ongoing pandemic and put this forward. I would not have waited until a few weeks before we reopened to ascertain the safety of the campus. And if the college refused to act in a timely manner, that's what New York State OSHA and the CDC are for. And with a well-run political action committee that I would have already established, I would have brought pressure to bear on the college through our elected officials to ensure a safe return to campus, not only for our faculty, but for our students. The NCCFT Executive Board passed a Ensuring a Safe Work Environment resolution in the spring. It provided a health and safety roadmap for the union to follow. Yet the union still has not wholly embraced nor acted on its most important ideas and suggestions. If they had, we would be further along in our goal, fully reopening safely face-to-face. Another thing I would have done differently is with regards to the CARES and the American Rescue Plan funds, which total about $41 million. How have these monies been spent? What have been the expenditures that have made this campus safer? I know the union has persistently tried to get this information, but has been largely rebuffed. Since the college won't voluntarily turn over the details and the college website is inadequate, I would have long ago requested and gotten this information using the Freedom of Information law. Remember, information is power. We can return face-to-face, but we must do it safely. I think we can. Protecting workers is what unionism was built on, and I will return to that principle. And then we and our students will all safely return to campus. All right, this is a compound question. So the next part of this question has to do with remote. So remote and other modalities are here to stay. At least that's what President Williams said at the Academic Senate the other day. I believe this is true. Technology and the changing needs of our student body will mandate this, whether we like it or not. So what do? The union needs to negotiate smart, fair, and equitable terms for working remotely, whether it's teaching a class or counseling students or carrying out other responsibilities. It doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter if I like remote or not, it's not going anywhere. The focus must be on negotiating and securing fair and equitable terms for working using this modality. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Students have made it clear that remote learning is a choice they want to have available to them, and so the administration has made it clear that remote learning is here to stay. Till now, we have treated it as the equivalent of face-to-face instruction, though I have heard rumblings that the administration would like to count it as distance education. In either case, remote learning's status as an instructional modality has yet to be formally negotiated, which is what I think right now about its future. It needs to be negotiated so that the terms under which it happens are fair and safe and just. Part of that negotiation, no doubt, will need to account for the kind of health and safety pivot to remote learning we had to undertake back in March 2020. And so I understand why this question connects remote learning to questions about health and safety. I think, however, that focusing on this connection actually ends up obscuring more than it reveals, both about our current situation and the path we might plot for our future. First and foremost, focusing on remote learning implicitly excludes non-classroom and professional faculty, many of whose jobs can also be done remotely. Secondly, we need to be careful to distinguish remote modalities, whether employed in or out of the classroom, from what it means for us to work remotely or telecommute. Here too, I want to take care to note, while that, with some exceptions, classroom faculty were able to work entirely from home until the end of summer 2021, and some are able to do so even now, our non-classroom members did not and do not have that option available to them. And obviously, I'm not talking here about members who are working from home because they've been granted reasonable accommodations. Though they are clearly important, the issues raised by what I said in that last paragraph are well beyond the purpose and scope of this forum. So I'd like to focus on what seems to me the main point of the question. What is or should be the union's role, and specifically the union president's role, in helping to maintain the safety of our work environment and the health and safety of our members? Before I answer that question, I want to be blunt about something. Once the pandemic hit, I believe we were, as a union, caught flat-footed when it came to health and safety. I don't mean we weren't paying attention. I don't mean we didn't work. Members of the executive committee, from the president on down, worked damned hard to make sure the administration was aware of and was addressing the health and safety concerns of our members. But we were not organized well enough internally for us to mobilize as a collective around those issues. This is not to blame the members who were sitting on our health and safety committee at the time. As far as I know, that committee has never been organized in the way I am talking about. And so I invite you to imagine with me how our health response to the health and safety concerns raised, for example, specifically by the non-classroom faculty who were given no choice but to work on campus, might have been different if we had a health and safety committee that was prepared to track faculty complaints, communicate those complaints efficiently and effectively, not only to the NCCFT Executive Committee, but also the administration, track the administration's responses or lack thereof, establish a relationship with PESH, which is the public employee version of OSHA, if and when it became necessary, and to mobilize faculty to take action in response, like, for example, speaking to the Board of Trustees. If I am elected, I am prepared, by which I mean I have available the resources and the contacts, and they're from NYSET, to help us set up our health and safety committee in this way. And as one example of the difference this might make, you may remember from the blog post that Dave Stern and I attended a meeting with Joe Muscarella, other members of the administration, and the company that was contracted to do the ventilation study over the summer. At that meeting, I asked Dave to be there because really he had the information, he had the knowledge to ask the kinds of questions that needed to be asked, which he did. And he was able to persuade the college to ask the vendor to do more work than was actually in the original proposal. It was not, we were not satisfied with that amount of work, but nonetheless, it was more work that they did. And we were able to persuade the college to do that. I'd just like to invite you to imagine how much more we might have been able to accomplish at a meeting like that if David and I had been able to go to that meeting with the work of the kind of health and safety committee I'm describing behind us, informed by that work and prepared to push harder than we did at that meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. We're now moving on to the next question. What do you plan to do to address the rumor that the chairs will be eliminated from the bargaining unit? What do you think of the requirement that the chairs are forced to work 4 days on campus when administrators or other faculty do not have to be on campus? Fall 21, 4 days a week. Richard, you start this and then Faren can conclude.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes, thank you.
Yes.
It is concerning that the chairs are, as far as I know, the only group within our bargaining unit and maybe on campus as a whole that has been offered no pandemic-related flexibility in how they fulfill their contractual obligations. Some chairs I know see this as punitive, and maybe it is. In terms of the concerns of this forum, however, it is concerning because it seems to me to be in keeping with the administration's position that the chairs should not be seen, quote, as members of the instructional faculty, which is how they are in section 21-1 of the contract, but rather as middle management administrators. We know this is the administration's position because they have put taking the chairs out of the bargaining unit on the table in negotiations, as far as I know, in each negotiation going back at least a decade. And it's not hard to understand why. If the administration were to be successful, they'd create a whole level of middle management on the cheap. That's why it's also important to understand that there are only two ways the chairs could be removed from the NCCFT. A negotiating team would have to negotiate it, or the administration would have to file a petition with PERB for what's known as unit clarification and successfully persuade PERB that the chair's job is misclassified and does not belong within the NCCFT bargaining unit. It's hard to imagine either of those scenarios coming to pass. No negotiating team worth its salt, and certainly no negotiating team that I lead, would ever agree to remove the chairs from our bargaining unit. And if the administration were to file a petition for unit clarification, not only would we fight it tooth and nail, it's also important to remember that the administration would bear an exceptionally heavy burden of proof. Any argument they made would have to demonstrate that the past half century plus of past practice, since the chairs have been members of our bargaining unit since its beginning, had somehow been wrong. Neither of those points, however, actually addresses the anxiety underlying this question, which is that we all know what it would cost us if the chairs were not in our bargaining unit. Section 21-1 of the contract defines the chair as the chief academic officer of his/her department. The wording is deliberate, and you can see the breadth and depth of that responsibility outlined in the 6 pages of detailed contract language that defines the chair's job. As large and important and stressful as that job is, however, and make no mistake, the additional compensation chairs receive is in no way commensurate with the work they are required to do. The fact that they do this work within our bargaining unit means that they stand collectively and individually as a shared governance bulwark against administrative fiats that all too often prioritize so-called efficiencies and short-term economic expediency over academic integrity and what we understand to be the true educational welfare of our students. If the chairs were removed from the bargaining unit, we would lose all that, and so would our students. The chairs represent, in other words, a core strength of our system of shared governance, which is why I will do whatever I need to support and protect them so they can do their jobs the best way they know how. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Faren, ready to respond?
Yep. So, every time we get ready to negotiate a new contract, the rumor floats around that they want to eliminate the chairs. And you know what? They do. The college, through its lawyer, John Gross, has made this demand for decades. I will never entertain such a demand. For me, it's just simply a non-starter. If this union were to agree to remove the chairs from this bargaining unit, it will further gut this faculty. We will be reduced to a status of unprofessional workers who have absolutely no say in our daily work lives. This is how important the chairs are to us. It's that simple. We don't have to go chapter and verse of everything they do. We know, we work with the chairs. So to make a long story short, not to belabor a point, I would pledge, and I do pledge, that I would never agree to remove the chairs from our bargaining unit. So that's the end of that story. Now turning to the chairs and how they're working. The fairest thing is to require the chair's work situation to match that of their faculty and even the administration. And while I realize they have contractual obligations to be present on campus, in the midst of an unprecedented public health emergency, what they're doing to the chairs makes absolutely no sense. During that time, we've all undertaken tasks that normally don't fall to us, worked far beyond what's required of us, spent countless hours learning, or in the case of many PFU, assisting everyone to learn or access these new modalities. It's been a daunting task, right? So it's my understanding that chairs have complained to the union that they're sitting in damp, moldy offices for hours and that few students come, as almost everyone is remote. Most of the administrators, like the college attorney, the head of the Office of Labor Relations, are performing the majority of their duties from the safety of their homes. And we all know much of the faculty is doing the same. So also let me say that I find it unacceptable for PFU and the non-classroom faculty to be treated differently as well. This goes for everyone. The union, working with the college, should have, well before the fall semester started, agreed on our working conditions as long as we are under pandemic conditions. And these rules should have been equitably applied. This crisis is over a year and a half old, and it's simply not acceptable that this was never adequately addressed. And I view this in large measure as a failure of union leadership. Thank you.
Okay. We're ready for closing statements, and the way I understand it, Richard, you're going to do your closing statement first.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I have shared with you tonight some of why I think I am the right person to lead the NCCFT as we face the challenges that we face. In closing, I would like to share with you as well the 4 primary values underlying my own commitment to this union. that we are a union of higher education professionals committed to the values of public higher education and to the personal, professional, and civic success of our students. That we value and will therefore do what we need to do to protect and preserve our collective bargaining agreement as the framework that allows us to pursue this commitment under fair and just conditions of employment. That the strength of our contract and the commitment it enables, coupled with the depth and breadth of our experience, means we have a lot that we are eager to offer in shaping the future success of Nassau Community College, and that we welcome any and all opportunities the administration offers us to be a meaningful part of that discussion. If you share those values with me, I hope you will give me your vote to be the NCCFT's next president. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next presenter is Faren.
So we all know that over the past decade, both in good times and bad times, our losses have been mounting: shrinking faculty, increased workloads, lag pay, half steps, tiny raises, the erosion of shared governance, and an administration that increasingly disrespects the faculty in our union. Do not accept the idea that COVID is the sole and primary cause of our present difficulties. It's not. It's just another excuse for our current problems, which have been building over a decade. However, I don't believe that loss is inevitable. We must and can reverse this trend. And this election is about our future. Voting opens tomorrow. And before you vote, ask yourselves, will we be better off if we continue down the path that this union has traveled for the past decade? And I submit to you, we will not. This is a choice offered in this election. Forge a new path with me or continue down the old one. We need a change of direction, and that requires new leadership. I will do this in a smart, civil, and constructive manner. And this union and our members will be respected again. I believe, in fact, I know that things can and will be better. And I believe that our future is now. Thank you.
Okay, let's thank both of our presenters who put a lot of work into their presentation today. So this was great. There is a question on the floor, and it's not for the presenters. This is just a question that somebody has about abstention. So what I'm going to do is refer his question to the tellers committee, and then you guys can get back to him. It's in the chat, okay? All right, our next set of presentations are going to be for the VPs, and that's going to happen in about 10 minutes. The forum should open now, but it's not going to start until 5:30, okay? Have a good afternoon.